Welcome to the Wednesday night live show. We have no name for it. It's just for you patrons. Oh, I'm hearing the YouTube. Welcome to the I hate my voice. You'd think after 20 years of radio, you'd eventually start to like your own voice, but that's not the case. Mittens is here. Rimzo, Reinhold, and Morgan are hanging out in the background. So, I've been making these phone calls to patrons, and let me just fix a couple oh, sorry, Mittens. Oop, I just punched my cat. I punched her really hard. I don't know if you heard her teeth crack or not. So I talked to some patrons. Like I said, I've been doing these Patreon calls, and, you know, one guy was like, yeah, I was like, why'd you drop down to $1? And he said, well, there just wasn't much of a reason to be at the $5 level. And I was like, oof. So I decided that we would, on Wednesday nights, get together and have a Patreon specific episode. This is the night that my stepdaughter goes to her real dad, and so it's not going to cut into family time. And I just think every 7 p.m. on Wednesday night will be great. Will be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot looser. I heard two things that kind of surprised me from the, I should have actually, like, plugged my shit in. This is old school wall where nothing's professional, nothing's done right. I'm just a mess. I had to wake up at 4:30 today to take my wife to the airport. Now, Reinhold, can you hear me? See, all right, how about now? Okay, and see, you're on the wrong channel. Old school wall. Hold on here. You're coming out of the wrong thing. All right, there we go. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
All right, there we go.
Nobody likes the sound of their own voice.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine who's a comedian, has been a comedian for 30 years. He has to...
Oh, for fuck's sake. If you're not watching the video, I just... kicked myself out.
So glad I put clothes on. I thought it was going to be one of those types of afternoons.
You have no idea how grateful I am for that.
All right.
You know, some people pay for that. Morgan, if that's your real name, you cheap son of a bitch.
All right.
You're welcome that you got...
All right, let me start over. Welcome to Wednesday Night Live. We have no real name for this show. We are going to be talking to the patrons. Like I said, I heard two things consistently. One, that people like that we chit-chat, that's relatable, that they can connect to it. But we don't do as much of that anymore, and then that they'd like to just hear more about my life. And honestly, the show is pretty big at this point, and there's just some things I'm not comfortable talking about, but I'll talk to a smaller audience, and so we'll have some of those conversations here. And then the second thing is that people really liked that they really liked that we help explain current events from a broad perspective. I did not hear from anyone of you patrons that, well, we're really libertarianism. The word wasn't mentioned once, and I know my critics will find that incredibly believable. But, you know, we are talking about libertarianism. We're just kind of being sneakier about it than more overt, because frankly, I just don't know who wants to walk into a conversation where the intended goal is to have your beliefs changed. I don't want to be indoctrinated. I get enough of that. Then I also heard from a patron, why'd you drop down to the $1 level? And he said, because there's not much at the $5 level, which I was like, ooh, okay. So, I figured we'd start doing a show on Wednesday nights, 30 to 60 minutes, and have a conversation with, the co-hosts, myself, talk about current events, talk about our lives, talk about whatever, and invite some of the patrons on. If you're at the $10 level or above, you get to sign up and pop in and join Wednesday night. We're going to see how the $10 level goes. I might have to restrict it to the $25 level if it gets out of hand and we get too many people. And then if you're at the $5 level, you get to watch or listen in the Facebook group, Dear Leaders Court. Contact Christy Avery to get put in there. So that's what this is. So every Wednesday night, 99% of Wednesday nights, but there will be the one exception, where I'm on a trip or I've got something going on, and then I'll try and find a co-host to fill in, like Hody or Rimzo. So that's what this is. It's just a loose hang every Wednesday night, chit-chatting about our lives and current events. And joining me tonight is a cast of characters for sure. We're going to put co-host up at the top here. No offense to our patrons, but we've got Reinhold. Reinhold and I have been fighting all night about gay stuff, which we may talk about, which I'd love. Reinhold, you're really low. You're really low.
How about now?
And then, no, louder. Like, you're super low. Remzo, how are you tonight?
Christy would have paid to see me naked earlier.
You logged on, you're like, is this just a chit-chat with patrons? I'm naked. I'm like, no, it's a show. You're like, oh, I'll put clothes on. As if, like, the alternative was okay.
Christy, come on. Come on, girl. Come on.
Christy, do you want to see Remzo's nuts?
I didn't get to see that.
Okay. It's all good.
All right, am I coming in any better now?
Yeah, it's still a little low. And then Morgan Rigg, that was Christy Avery. Everybody knows who Christy Avery is. Morgan Rigg, who the hell are you?
Well,
you didn't want to see me naked.
In the world.
What'd you say, Morgan?
Well, I'm the most interesting libertarian in the world. There have been a couple meetings.
Yeah, okay. Morgan, Christy, Morgan, I accuse you two of dating often. I don't think there's any truth to that, but I'm going to keep saying it. Is he the most interesting libertarian in the world?
No comments.
Morgan, you and Christy live in the same county, right? Are you both from Fort Wayne?
No, I'm in the county just north of Fort Wayne.
What
We're in the same commercial district, so.
Okay, all right.
And I do visit. I do attend Allen County functions. If it hadn't been for a family issue here, I'd actually.
Yeah, not tonight.
And then so Morgan is a good libertarian. You're doing what for the Libertarian Party of Indiana?
Right now, I'm the field director. Basically, it's primarily just to help oversee volunteer activities within the party.
Okay.
And after our state convention, I'm also now once again a candidate for state representative in my district. So it'll be a second run. And I'm also going to be a delegate again to the national convention this year in Reno.
We'll have fun with that. Reinhold, that sounds like that'll be fun, right?
I'm going too.
Oh, you poor bastard. Remzo, you never were in the Libertarian Party, were you?
I was in Virginia. That was the first campaign I ever really took part of. It was a House of Delegates race in a three-way race open for a vacant seat in the Virginia House of Delegates. I did that, worked on an independent campaign. There were some like local Libertarian Party races where I was in Virginia. And then after that, I just worked exclusively Republican campaigns.
Are you even doing anything political at this point?
No. I haven't done anything remotely political since 2018. Really, that was when I kind of packed up shop and went over to the media. And since then, I've pivoted hard towards digital marketing. I mean, it was something to do when I was young and poor and trying to figure stuff out. And like most bad habits, I'm pretty sure that I got out of it at the right time enough to course correct my life. But I think it's good when you're older and you've got more time and a reliable income coming in, so then it could be a good hobby. But I don't look at these kids who are like, I'm gonna go live in my van because this candidate is gonna go ahead and bring all the troops home, and I'm like, dude, you stupid, you gotta fix some shit. It would be better if you did some hard drugs, because at least you could learn some business strategies from the dealers.
Now, Matt,
or learn how to be a musician.
Right.
That too.
Right. But you're definitely not getting laid. Now, Morgan, defend yourself. He seems, what's the term that you alt-right Nazis, Remzo, use? Black-pilled?
I don't even know. Apparently, I'm just too happy and joyous for those people.
For the black-pilled people?
Everybody hates me.
Well,
I can't find like a nice solitary middle ground anywhere.
Tell me about it. I don't know. Well, Morgan, like, why are you involved in politics? Because I spoke at the Libertarian. We'll talk about. Don't let me forget, Remzo, the middle ground, because of the war stuff. Because we're all starting to sort into sides now, and it's already starting to get annoying.
I'm on Team Raytheon. I made so much money from short sales last week. I might as well be like the luckiest person in this whole conflict, and I don't know how I feel about that.
I spoke to the Libertarian Party of Indiana convention for the first time in 10 years on Saturday night. Most people think I'm a Libertarian Party guy, but I mean, Morgan and Reinhold can tell you I haven't been around in so long. And a lot of that is life stuff. I got divorced in 2014 and then made a brief appearance in 2016, and then that was a hassle, so I was out. But I still support people like Morgan, and then Reinhold's on the state central committee. Like, you guys do what you do. I'm happy that you do what you do. I'm just not. I'm like Remzo. I'm just kind of not interested in direct political action anymore. But like,
I think it's for some people. It's just not. It's just not for me. I don't ever want to sound like I'm attacking what people do because they feel like they want to do it. It just wasn't for me.
So
to be clear, I'm doing my role because there's nobody else that wants to do it, and I think it needs done. So if there's anybody out there who wants to be a District 4 rep, just step up and let me know, and we'll try to work that out.
But Morgan, you're like super involved. Why are you super involved? What are you doing over there?
That would be a long story for me. I was raised in a family of Reagan conservatives. We were always, I think it's fair to say we were probably more aware of what was going on in politics than I think most other families in the area. But I was always instilled with the idea that freedom was important, and we always believed. I mean, what Reagan used to say: the government isn't the solution, government is the problem. And that was definitely instilled in me as I grew up. As time passed, I eventually found my way to libertarianism, partly thanks to Ron Paul, partly to think tanks like Cato and Mises, the advocates for self-government, partly people in the Libertarian Party who I became acquainted with, yourself included, Chris. And that's ultimately the direction I took. And I'm active now because I would say in an existential way, for lack of a better word, I believe what happens in politics at all the levels affects how we live our lives on a day-to-day basis. And I want to do what I can to try to steer things in the direction towards greater individual liberty. It is admittedly for my benefit, but I also see it as the benefit of everybody else. And as far as where the political parties are, I look at the Libertarian Party as really the only political party that is truly about the liberty of the individual and is truly about limiting the scale, the scope, and the power of government. And that's why I'm as active as I am now.
Yeah, I mean, Remzo, you made a face when he said politics is involved in every area of our life. I probably would have disagreed 2 years ago, but now I don't think so, because it's feels like we're off to the races. Like the pandemic, like you already had an encroaching government in so many different ways. Like the first domino to fall was nobody giving a shit about PRISM and then collecting all of our metadata and information. Now, like, if your business doesn't cancel Russia, you're gonna have some problems. Like, I guarantee that the White House and all these mechanisms that were built, because long story short, Joe Biden weaponized the private sector. He couldn't actually get a vaccine mandate passed. It would be too unpopular, and he wouldn't have the legal authority to do it. So the White House basically started calling private businesses and tried the OSHA workaround. And I would bet 2 years from now, Remzo, we look back and we see that the Biden administration is doing that and calling, McDonald's, really, you got to do the right thing. As if McDonald's hasn't been trying to kill me my entire life with poisonous food and has no concern for doing the right thing.
I'm going to stop that shit right there.
Yeah.
The Big Mac is the most nutritious meal ever invented.
No, it's the McDouble.
The McDouble?
The McDouble's the cheapest, most nutritious meal invented in human history. That's a true fact.
Have I been getting that wrong my entire life?
Yes. Yep, it's the McDouble. I use that fact all the time.
What, Morgan?
It's the McChicken. That's the cheapest and the most.
No, it's the McDouble.
It's not real chicken. It's not real chicken.
I said to Reagan the other day, I go, listen, this is not real beef, but their patties are still delicious.
Yes. I think, we see this each time there's something new to be mad at. I think it was you or somebody else who went ahead and posted that meme of Trisha with the little banner that said, "I'm against the new bad thing."
Yeah, I'll find it.
And,
really funny.
in 2021, I just finished my taxes like a good statist recently. When I went ahead and counted how much I had actually donated to charity, I had donated more than I had ever donated any year prior. And because I tried to work as much as I could, and because I leveraged my skills as much as I could, I love it. I absolutely love it. On a pretty modest income, I donated close to 5 figures
Nice.
to charity. And it was one of those situations where I really began to evaluate the changes I made in my life. And what I realized was that if I had been going on the path that I was, where I was just doing full-time consulting, full-time political work, full-time activism, I would have never been able to help people afford funerals for friends, afford to put a roof over a building for a youth club in my hometown, afford to help people fix their cars so that way they could get to work and drive their children to daycare. I think with a lot of people, what we think is that the best way to fix all the other problems in their day-to-day lives is a top-down collectivist approach through government. But it was through my own actions that I was actually able to see tangible results in people's lives. And I think far too often we get so fixated on the big monsters, like in Lord of the Rings. It's like, we could deal with, Saruman and everybody, but we've got a giant orc army and we got to kill them all before we get to the mountain. I mean, I know that's kind of a crude example, but it's
no, but I know what you mean. Like the like gas prices right now, like, it's a very ham-fisted debate that is developing on Twitter. I know you're a creature of Twitter too, Rimzo. Like, I tweeted last week, I was like, just wait 2 weeks, then Team Blue and Team Red will sort themselves out into 2 positions, and you will be stuck between them, and only allowed to take one of them without being a bad and immoral person. There was a meme that kind of like, gas prices, first and foremost, if you're poor, if you're a truck driver, if you're an Uber driver, if you're somebody that makes your living with gasoline, it's really tough right now. Like, and I hear you, I feel you, it's not an inconvenience for me, right? I work from home, and it's going to add $20 to $30 a month to my till. But for people like me, it's become this great moral good that we have to cancel Russia's oil, and who cares if you have high gas prices? And then, like, the other side is, well, I'm going to fight for the poor people, for the essential workers who are getting crushed again. And then, like, nobody is, I don't know if Russia's oil actually goes to gas prices. I read it went to petroleum, so it may have nothing to do with it, but we've sorted ourselves into 2 moral goods, and you have to choose one. And then it sort of like reads kind of like this, where, this meme here basically, just think poor Americans are having to pay more than $6 for a gallon of gas, and it's these, people leaving their fleeing homes in Kiev. And it all just kind of strikes me as a narcissistic debate, like a very Reinhold and then, Rimzo. But what Rimzo, I think exactly what you're saying, like, everybody just sorts themselves into these moral goods, and you have to choose one.
Yeah, and I mean, I really had to think about this because, you can almost, and I'm going to say almost in air quotes, because I used to bet against Brexit and I lost a bunch of money when I didn't have money in 2020. So don't ask me, put money on horses and things like that. But I was really starting to see within days of the Russian invasion, Like, why are commodities going up so high right now? I mean, the last time the price of gold and silver was like this was around the time that we were going ahead and doing the surge in 2006. It wasn't even like this when Trump was bombing Syrian airfields.
Or the last time Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yeah, or the last time in 2014. So it's one of the situations where I'm like, when precious metals are outperforming the S&P 500 and Bitcoin, of all things, something is going to happen. And then I began to look at, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. They jumped 10% in a week, and they've been holding still. And what that basically shows is that people are in a freak out mode that they think is going to last longer than most conflicts. Usually you see this, and what you have is you have a lot of people jumping onto commodities, whether they're buying like bushels of corn or precious metals or something like that, and they're freaking out about that. Then you have the housing market, which is getting ready to crash, because a lot of people got house poor when they went ahead and bought those homes in 2020 because interest rates were so low, and they thought that this will never go away. And now you have this happening. So it's one of those situations where I looked at it and I'm like, this is going to be good for a lot of people. And when I say good, I'm meaning that like some people are going to make a lot of money off of somebody else's pain. And then there's going to be people that are just going to try and inflict as much pain on other people as possible. And it's just one of those cruel facts where it's like, nothing I do, no changing of Twitter banners, no calling legislators is going to do anything to help those refugees fleeing into Poland. It's certainly not going to help Russians who are probably out of a job, who can't afford food right now, who have just found themselves cut off from the entire world. What I can do, though, is focus inward. What can I do to help myself? What can I do to help my family? What can I do to focus on my community? Because no amount of good thoughts, no amount of anything else other than deep prayer and goodwill is going to do anything about that over there.
Yeah.
But how can I impact those around me immediately?
I did donate some money to feeding the refugees into Poland. So, I mean, there's some things, but
that's direct action.
Nothing really.
Yeah. That's way more. People are going to look.
What Reinhold did means immensely more than everyone that has the Ukrainian flag on their Facebook profile picture.
Right.
Which I don't, because it's useless.
It's totally useless. What I've been trying to get at, like, I don't agree with this guy, but I would recommend everybody go read Gary Kasparov's book. Winter is Coming, about Putin. He was, I think I mentioned him on the show. He's this chess champion who's a longtime opponent of Putin, and basically argues what the West has done forever with Putin is meaningless. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't have cakeism. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So every time an American president, like the last 4 presidents, have stood next to Vladimir Putin, or some, third world dictator like in Venezuela, that sends a signal to the people of that country that they're basically, like, their hopes of trying to overturn the guy are meaningless. And then they continue to buy their oil and continue to feed the beast. And so it's like, you can have the flag, like the Ukrainian flag all you want, and light up your buildings, but if you continue to do business with Russia, if you continue to fund their war machine, then you're a problem. But then if you stop doing business with Russia and decide that going to Venezuela is a better alternative, you're foolish. Like, it's nothing that the government is doing at the moment makes any sense. Like, it has Russia negotiating the Iranian nuclear deal, and we're basically giving the Iranians everything that they want, and we're basically going to be paying as American taxpayers to have Iran build a nuclear weapon, like, and ballistic missiles. Like, it's bonkers. Like, so what am I trying to say here? Like, Biden stopping the sale of Russian oil was like a meaningful thing. Cutting them off from SWIFT, not really meaningful. They cut off banks that weren't even the biggest banks. They just basically pushed them into the arms of the Chinese financial system and made that problem worse. And they actually took a stand in cutting off Russian oil that they haven't wanted to do for 20 years. And Kasparov argues that if they had actually done this 20 years ago, then it would have stopped Putin when he could be stopped, right? So if you argue for sanctions, like, you can't argue against high gas prices. Like, that's the choice. That's the trade-off, right? I'm not arguing for sanctions, and so therefore I get the right to bitch about high gas prices. But if you are the person who is saying we need to do more, then you don't get to argue that I should get low gas prices and the ability to punish the Russian government. Like, you can't do it. Like, there is no magical money fairy anymore. There's trade-offs. There's real hard trade-offs. And so we just don't have, I think a lot of it, Reinhold, comes down to just a lack of moral clarity in this country. Like, we want to be selectively outraged at whatever is in front of us, and we forget about it in 2 weeks, and there's always another thing to get mad at, but we never really settle on our own principles, let alone any kind of, like, society doesn't have principles. Like, that's a fool. Like, that doesn't exist. Individuals have principles, but in a world where we're just watching this screen, like, there's no moral clarity, there's no consistency even within ourselves.
Well, and like, I think you remember about 2 weeks ago when all this kind of started going down, somebody said that what the American people want is Biden to stop Putin without it costing us any more money, without it raising gas prices.
Right. Insane.
And that's not
impossible.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. So he's going to take a ding for it, right? But yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation because we can't just send troops over there. I mean, we just can't do that. We just got out of Afghanistan. We can't go back in and start fighting another protracted war like that. But how do you defend against aggression like that? So, and I know we don't have the moral higher ground there because we've been doing it for 40 years, or however long it's been, trying to fight all these battles across the world that really had nothing to do with us. So, where do we draw that line? Where do we think that we can make a difference, right? And it's always been that way. Like, when we talk about taxes and people are like, I don't think we should pay as many taxes because they think that they're going to be able to keep that money. It's like, well, we still have to take care of other people. And that's what the government are trying to use those taxes for. They're doing it very badly and inefficiently, but we still need to take care of people. We need to help people. So we still need to be willing to spend that money to do that. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that fact too. So what I always look at libertarianism is that we are fighting for the protection of the rights of the minority against the abuses of the majority. Right. That's what government is the abuses of the majority on top of the rights of the minority. And that's what we should be fighting against more than anything.
Rimzo, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, let's just get into a grayer space. I got into it wasn't an argument, but it was a pretty heated discussion of somebody on Twitter recently because I said, when one of the many breaking news periods over the past week came out and said, oh, the Russians have almost completely annihilated the Ukrainian army, and we don't know whether that was real or not. Immediately I tweeted, buy Booz Allen Hamilton, buy Raytheon, buy Lockheed Martin. And people were just disgusted by that. They're like, you're a war profiteer. How could you say that? That's blood money. And here's how I look at it, because I actually have some folks who I think are incredibly intelligent individuals who I think made a terrible financial decision. They took all the money they had in their 401ks and their Roth IRAs, and they withdrew it from the stock market, and they put it all in precious metals and crypto. Because they said, I don't want to be part of any of this. I'm like, well, that's like the ultimate virtue signaling. Right. Because now what you've just completely done is you've destroyed yourself financially, but you're also, drawing a line in the sand saying that everybody, whether where your money is pooled together with other things or not, it might be touching company A or company B, because you're doing that, you're almost part and parcel of the problems. It's like, why conservatives were banning Coke, we're boycotting Coca-Cola. It's like, I'll ban Coke because they're woke and I'll go drink Pepsi. And it's like, so now everyone that drinks Coke is woke. It's like, that doesn't make sense. But, I invest in these companies that I have a major disagreement with. Why? Because they've got good balance sheets. You look at the defense sector, it's the fourth branch of government. Lockheed Martin, Booz Allen Hamilton, they've got guaranteed immortality. I can't say that about other companies. So
some would say first branch, but
some would,
Why-
some would say first branch. but here's where I'm going to end that, Chris. Like, if I'm going to go ahead and invest in these companies and I'm going to collect a dividend, either I'm taking that money and I'm putting it towards other good, useful, like truly good intentioned things, or it's going to somebody else where they're going to invest it into bad things. It's one of those situations where it's like, if somebody's going to go ahead and do this, it might as well be me, because at least I know what I'm doing with it.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen, you have to have the past be your guide, right? Like Joe Biden's White House, Donald Trump's White House gave how much money to Pfizer and Moderna and Eli Lilly and all these companies? Like, if we're headed to where I think we're headed, why wouldn't you want to buy the companies that are about to get a lot of financing? Right? Like, why? I don't know. The moral choice, I guess, let me try to bring some clarity to the conversation that we stumbled into here. There, with something like the war in Ukraine, it boils down to like two options, right? We've got to do something. We're not doing enough. Let's do more. And then let's do nothing at all. It's not our problem. It's not my problem. And I think what we're arguing is that there's a third choice. There's a third way, a third action. I don't know what you want to call it, which is what can you personally do? Like Reinhold donating money, or Remzo capitalizing off of the misery of those people by war profiteering. Or, I've talked about my in-laws. If you want to read the story, go to the Brown County Democrat about their efforts to adopt the Ukrainian orphans, and I've got the story posted there about, imagine the shock of people in Brown County, Indiana, as they opened up their newspaper and saw me on the front page. And yes, this is my wife's family, all of them. They're trying to do what they can, because I heard my father-in-law say about 3 or 4 months ago, I always wanted to say it's not our problem, and then pointed at those kids and said, it is kind of our problem now, isn't it? So, I mean...
I have...
Go ahead.
Before we go any further, I do have a question for Remza. Do you think this is sound financial advice? Should people put all their money into buying rubles?
Like, should Americans put all their money into buying rubles?
Yeah.
Didn't Brian Wolgemuth do that?
Can you still buy?
Eventually, it's going to go up.
Yeah, I mean, I know somebody that was buying rubles like when they were the equivalent of like 5 cents, and then when they hit a penny, he was like, "Shit, I can't buy anymore." I mean, it's one, legally. I am not a financial expert. You should not take advice from this person you see on the Al Gore's magic internet. But I think it's one of those situations where, and this is a big hypothetical, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I think, my opinion, I was wrong about Brexit, I'm wrong about a lot of things. I think Putin's gone by the end of this. I think he gets killed or he gets overthrown and exiled. I think we're dealing with a completely new government.
But
but the reality is, how long does that take? I think you're right, but I think that Did you see the pictures of Macron after his conversation with Putin?
Oh, where he's crying? Well, he's French, so I don't give him that much credit. But like, if you're gonna buy rubles, what that is gonna force a lot of people to do is take a direct interest in Russia. And maybe I'm an optimist here, but I think the best thing that helps people recuperate from war is business. And if we can get a bunch of European and North American companies to go back and rebuild Russia and go back and rebuild Ukraine, I think we're going to see a situation where a lot of this misery will be cut in half because people are getting their lives back together. Now, what that does is that's going to take a lot of authority away from Russians who were just financially destroyed. It's going to shift it over to foreign powers. That's going to leave a giant stain on the whole system. But, whether people want to go ahead and start becoming the new foreign Russian oligarchs or not, I really think that comes down to a question of why. I mean, I'm not doing that because that's a whole thing I don't want to personally get into. But I do know people that have started doing that, people who are hedge fund traders who I'm looking at this and I'm like, you're really relishing it. And because of that, it's one of those situations where it's like, I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah. And I want to agree with you on Putin being gone after this, but I've been introduced to the other side of this story where I've talked to some people, and they are around in rural Indiana, and they are Trump people, and they listen to certain podcasts that are just nothing but QAnon stuff, and they're all pro-Putin, and the United States government's lying to you, and this is all they had to do this because NATO was, in our Ukraine already, and they were doing all this stuff, and they were putting bombs in there secretly. There's so much just propaganda is out there right now that
you know what, and I'll let you finish your point.
Okay.
I'll let you finish your point here in just a minute, because I don't disagree with you. In that Kasparov book, he talks about Chechnya in 94 and 99, and basically the reason that countries wanted to start joining NATO, he outlines, is the war crimes that were created by the Russian government in Chechnya, which wanted to break away and they didn't want to let it because it had ill-defined borders. And so Yeltsin and then Putin basically sent in, special forces and committed like all these atrocities, like we're seeing the bombing of children's hospitals and basically doing, what they did in Syria too. And so all these like newly freed countries saw two things. First, that Russia would do that to them. And second, that they wouldn't do it to a NATO country because of the threat of force, because of the power of the United States military. And so all of these countries wanted to get into NATO because of Russia's actions. So he outlines basically that the woe is me, Russia is always the victim mentality of some of that stuff is earned by Russia and isn't. That basically the United States did not go around knocking on doors trying to recruit people to NATO. They elected democratic governments, and then those governments said, we don't want to spend a lot on defense, let us into NATO, because the inherent threat of force is why Putin didn't invade a NATO country. He invaded Ukraine. So I thought that was an interesting alternative fact that most libertarians are not hearing. And I do sort of agree with you, and we've only got about 10 minutes left here, but Remzo, it does, after the pandemic years, it does seem really hard to be optimistic because things can always get worse. Like my best hopes for how I thought things would play out, and surely the middle will rise to the occasion and assert its libertarian muscle and force schools and governments to do the right thing, and that never materialized. And we live in an open and free society where maybe people are paralyzed by facts, but in Russia they have such a strong centralized authority. Like the Eye of Moscow was this independent newspaper that was allowed to operate, and it was the only media outlet allowed to say bad things about Vladimir Putin. But it was owned by the major oil company, Gazprom. So there was this inherent, you can say what you want and criticize Putin, and you're the only ones, but you're still owned by the major Russian oil company, owned by the state. They got shut down 2 weeks ago. So there's I want the Russian people to liberate themselves. I've been in contact with the head of the Libertarian Party of Russia. He is now detained. They were too. They did not think it would be wise to do an interview. I asked them, and I was like, certainly don't get killed on my behalf. But yeah, I see. So I think it takes a long time. I think we're in this for the duration. I think that this is going to escalate. I do think that the United States government and Joe Biden are doing everything they can to not escalate it militarily. I don't think that they see sanctions as escalations, which is their foolish myopathy, because it very was much a declaration of war. When they implemented these sanctions, it was taken that way by the Russians. Vladimir Putin declared it as war. And so when the guy who basically was looking for justification to declare war on you says, I declare war on you because you declared war on me, you have to listen to that and assume that we're in for a long road. But because he is the aggressor, because he is the person who is acting out of the bounds of decent moral behavior, the moral clarity of, invading a country is much different than, like, what am I trying to say? Like, I think people feel
there are things that are obviously wrong,
right?
But when we have to wonder whether something is right or wrong passively, it's still not an opportunity to say, well, it's not this, therefore that is the right thing.
Yeah, like, I mean, the invasion of Afghanistan, right? Everybody except one congresswoman thought that was a good idea. We'd been attacked. It was self-defense. Iraq, a whole different equation, which is why so many people then and now think that that was wrong. Because the moral clarity of being invaded, the moral clarity of being attacked and defending yourself is different than the morality of an invader who has for 20 years said, I'm going to invade you, and then blowing up hospitals and all this stuff. So, but the West, I don't think, has the goods to stop him. They're going to be pushed into a hot war at some point with him. And I don't think that I don't think he can, like, I don't think he can live. You can't destroy your country's economy, 30 years of trillions of dollars of investment in 2 weeks, and have the oligarchs let you live.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations where, like, this conflict will end. Every conflict ends, but it's what's going to be what happens afterwards, which I think I'm more terrified by. And I don't think things are just going to be better because it ends. I think it's going to be a situation where they're going to see this as an opportunity to change the game permanently. We're already seeing this in the realm of cryptocurrency. Everyone thought it was bad when, the Freedom Convoy in Canada started getting into Bitcoin. Well, now you have the Wall Street Journal, the Independent in the UK, writing articles saying, it's great that these Ukrainian refugees are relying on cryptocurrencies because their banks got bombed, but it's not good that these Russians are also using it. So should we just try and ban cryptocurrency because bad guys use the same thing? It's that type of logic that terrifies me. And I think people need to prepare themselves because the war abroad will come home with an impact that will actually negatively impact us beyond what we're seeing right now. This whole gas thing is temporary. Yeah. The lasting repercussions of that in terms of online speech, in terms of where you can put your money and everything else, in terms of who you can support and what you can't support. I mean, the fact that we're seeing corporate America and corporations around the world go to war with Russia on Ukraine's behalf is both beautiful and horrifying.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like, there should be a moral stance, right? Like, I don't think that we can let the past 2 years and our bias against cancel culture, if you're on the right, like, water down and make you just become a reactionary against these tactics. Because and I'm not going to delude myself, Reinhold, that these people aren't just like reading Russian propaganda all day, because I see it, retweeted, Mark Whitney. But there has to come a point, like, why is Putin on Twitter? Pull that guy off of Twitter. He invaded a country and he's killing innocent people. He's not saying mean things against your, you know what I mean? Like, that's the wackiness of where we're at, in terms of our moral clarity. And I look at it and I go, yeah, why would I want to do business with Russia? Why do I want my tax dollars being sent to Russia's war machine in the form of oil purchases? We can find other sources. We can turn our own oil sources off. We can do more fracking. There's alternatives to giving money to people who do bad things. But at the same time, Remzo, you're exactly right. Like, McDonald's doesn't want to lose 9% of their revenue. So why is Twitter trying to call them out to force them to do something that they don't have to do if they don't want to? Now, somebody pointed out to me that these companies are not doing it because of the mob. They're doing it because they've lost their investment and there's no point in staying. There's no reason to continue operating because there's no cash flow between the two countries because of the actions of the government. They have no way to pay their people. There's no revenue coming in. So just cut your losses and move along because the investment that you've had for 30 years is gone, which makes a lot of sense to me. But Crisis of Leviathan by Robert Higgs. It outlines how the government uses every emergency to grow the tools of government. Just like Rimzo said, the tools of government that were grown for domestic spying never went away after Iraq and Afghanistan. And in a lot of ways, the war came home to roost. You look at what's going on in various quarters of politics, that is the war coming home to roost. We've turned on each other. The war has just basically... Osama bin Laden won that war. You look at what he wanted to accomplish with 9/11 and causing America to eat itself alive. He won. And so the pandemic allowed the government to grow a lot of tools as well. So what tools will they try to come up with, like banning cryptocurrency, in this emergency, in this crisis? That's the stuff you have to guard against. Like the oil futures from April being up 10% is not as nearly as concerning as the way that society is about to organize itself. So I couldn't agree with you more, Rimzo. For disagreement, here's Reinhold.
No, I just don't know the best solution. I mean, that's the thing with Russia. We ended the Cold War through basically propaganda, right? We propagandized rock and roll and freedom and blue jeans to Eastern or Western, it was Eastern Germany, and that kind of got that ball running, right? So that kind of propaganda, getting them to see that there was something other than what their government was telling them, caused them to push back on their government. And, and then we see what Russia's been doing in the United States is trying to foment that same thing, that same, fervent between different factions to try and get us against each other. And do we go that route? Do we try to propagandize to them, or do we isolate them like we did North Korea?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the whole world, even China, is telling Russia, no, this is wrong. And at some point, do we just turn them into a large North Korea sitting there with nuclear weapons?
Yeah. Yeah. It cannot be understated the danger of pushing Putin. When he has nuclear weapons, the man is like Osama bin Laden. They're not crazy. They're very rational, and they're telling you exactly what they're going to do and what they think. And people didn't listen to them and didn't take them seriously, and then they acted, and then the world is in a position where they have to defend themselves and aren't willing to pay the costs that it might take to actually solve this.
Yeah, bin Laden attacked the World Trade Center years before.
93.
And everybody just kind of blew it off. Yeah. Everybody's just like, it won't happen again.
So, all right. Well, we got to start wrapping up because I got to go get the kid from parenting time. Morgan, anything to add?
What else can I say except kudos and thanks for the opportunity to have me on here.
Absolutely. Hey, you got a Twitter or anything you want to plug?
I do have a Twitter account if anyone wants to follow it. It's Morg number 25. And I do have a Facebook page for it's my political page, but it's also currently now for my campaign page. It's facebook.com/rig for liberty. And you're welcome to follow that if you'd like.
All right, patrons.
You've got action hero last name.
Yes.
Coming this fall. Morgan Rig versus everybody.
In a world full of statists, one man named Morgan Rig was out for vengeance.
And he did it.
Justice.
The vote.
The most interesting libertarian in the world, Morgan Rig. With his... All right. Thanks so much for being here, Rimzo, Reinhold, Morgan. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, everybody. Yesterday was our 10th anniversary. I probably should have started with that. And in case you didn't hear or read we got a great video out there. I'd love for you to go and post what the network means to you. Post how much you enjoy this network. That's the only way we're going to grow. There's zero organic reach. Go look at our Facebook numbers, our Twitter numbers, our Instagram numbers. It's in the single digits in terms of likes because we are very last. Anything I control at this point is throttled. But After 10 years, we got 5 million downloads, 2,799 episodes across all the different shows, 328 patrons since 2017, 75 co-hosts, 30 different shows, 13 different websites, 8 different rage quits by Chris Galt, 7 trips to cover events, 6 live shows at a comedy club, 5.5 marriages, including my own, 4 email newsletters, 3 government watch lists, 2 divorces, including my own, 1 magazine, and a fist fight that will live in enemy. Enemy. And
infamy.
Thank you. And more arguments on a daily basis in group chat than anybody could ever account for. And I just thank you guys because all this effort has built long-lasting friendships and relationships for everybody that's been involved, and it's all paid for by our patrons, and we appreciate you so much. And we're walking into the next year, the next 10 years with a very clear vision to keep you sane, to keep us sane, and to keep growing these relationships. So we really do appreciate you. And, our mission, I've updated it, is we help listeners to understand current events, to empower them to improve their lives while liberating their communities. And in the process, we are building relationships that keep each of us sane. So thank our co-hosts, thank our sponsors, thank our patrons. You guys are the backbone of support. That's why we're doing this. We really appreciate you, and we're so excited that we're going to come to you every Wednesday night. So if you're $10 up, look on Wednesday night for the Patreon posting on patreon.com for the invitation to hop in, or you can go to Dear Leaders Court or the Patreon website to see the video. So check it out. Thanks so much, and we will see you next Wednesday. Take care.